Go.
What up?
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is the Producers Hangout. We are on episode, I believe, 6 now. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we're on episode 6, and I am Flux with fluxwithit.com, producer, sound designer, educator, general man about town. And I'm going to pass it off to Mike so he can introduce himself.
What up, guys? Mike here with patbangers.com. Hope you guys have a good time tonight. We have some interesting topics for you, and I pass it over to Kev.
Hey, what up? Kev here, KevWestBeats.com. Producers, just general synth nerd, and we're here. We're going to have some fun here. I'm going to pass it off to Bryce.
Bryce here. I go by Upright, producer, synth nerd, general music lover. I'll pass it over to Richard.
How you guys doing? I'm Richard London from London Sound Lab. I'm a pianist, I'm a composer, sound designer, music teacher, and it's good to be here. It's good to be a guest.
So before we get started, I'm just going to let everybody know, in case I have to run or anything like that, I'm remoting in from Kev's home area of Seattle today. I'm out here for a event called Creative Live, Mastering Machine with J.K. Swoops. So it'll be with J.K. is of soundsandgear.com, and Knock Squared and myself are going to be teaching an online course, and there will be live streaming free. We'll post the links in the I guess in the description, and then you can also buy it online and do whatever, and there's a live studio audience and all that good stuff. So I'm in one of the hidden production rooms right now, which is why my audio is probably a little funky and my internet connection might be dodgy, but I just wanted to get that out of the way in case I have to run. So
do you guys have anything new, anything that you bought in the last 2 weeks that you want to introduce to the people out there? And
No new gear here. I'm just glad I got my mojo back. Everybody's been, I don't know if everybody's known or not, I've had trouble just getting in the swing of music making, like keeping steady ideas. I've been playing with that Addictive Drums too. I got that. I got a review copy like a couple days before it came out. So I've been playing with that, but I had that 2 weeks ago. Other than that, nothing really new.
I did get the actual copy, the store copy of Urban Vault, which is a product I worked on with MVP Loops for an exclusive Guitar Center product. So I got my actual own copy of it finally. That's the actual in-store copy, which is really cool because there's a couple of final things in there that weren't in the build that I was sound designing inside of. So I got that. I've been messing with that a bit. And other than that, I've been playing mostly with the Beat Step, the Moog Sub Fatty, and I don't know, just a couple of random things. I've been focusing on this other stuff, so I'm kind of out of my sorts. What about you, Rich? Anything new in your studio?
Nope. Nothing new. Luckily, the old stuff is all very deep, so there's always something new.
Very nice.
That's how I've been feeling about Omnisphere. Every time I think I've figured it out, I learn like 3 new things about it.
What about you, Mike?
Nothing big, but I found something that I totally missed before. I'm going to show you guys for the iPad, and it's
Thor.
The great reason from the great synth from Reason. Actually, one of my favorite softwares, and they made an iPad version of it, and it's great. It's so much fun and can easily create new sounds. They use the touch interface very well. Also here with the expand buttons, where you can they just use the space pretty good, and it's so much fun. I used to I was on on a train ride last week for about 2 hours, and I played with it all the time and just created sounds. So much fun. So if you have an iPad and don't have it bought already, go and get it. It's highly recommended. It's a ton of fun.
What is your preferred method of controlling it? Are you controlling it 100% from the iPad, or are you using it more with your MIDI controller, or what?
When I'm on the run, I don't have a MIDI keyboard with me, so the touch controls work just fine. But here in the studio, I mapped out like the basic 8 functions to my knobs on the MIDI keyboard, like cutoff, resonance, LFO, stuff like that, and it works pretty good. So setting up is pretty easy. With you can select MIDI sources right here from your network or keyboard or whatever, or even other synths.
Nice.
Right now, here's the Sunriser, which is another synth on iOS, and yeah, pretty cool.
What would you say is standing out about it that's making you choose to use it more than some of your other synths?
I think it's the interface. I mean, first of all, it's the sound, because I think they covered the sound they have in Reason pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it's exact, right? It's exact. Yeah. It's the same thing.
It's the same score. It's like I believe it's the same synth engine actually.
Yep.
They just copied and made it work for the iPad.
Right.
I wish they made it work on the iPhone. Because I want
the Thor.
Yeah, Thor is amazing. Thor is the reason to have Reason, if nothing else.
No joke. No joke. Yeah.
Kong is good too, but Kong's my favorite Reason device, but it ain't got nothing on Machine. So there's that.
Ooh.
Is it linked to the desktop?
And also,
go ahead, Richard.
What is really cool about the iPad app is the keyboard mode, actually, because they have like this the chord progression stuff right here, so where you can set only the keys that really matching each other. So if you don't know how to play the keys, it's really easy to set up a custom keyboard layout that sounds really good, and that's even a big advantage over Reason, because I'm not sure with the up-to-date version, but I think at the moment there's no way in Reason to do something like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Last Reason version I have was version 5, I think, but this is pretty cool on the iPad, so you can play it really, really, really nice on the iPad.
I'm gonna have to get that app. I've been holding off on that just because I have Reason, but it's just for making presets away from Reason, like out mobile, and then shooting them over to Reason. That's a reason right there to have it. Yeah.
Are they still supporting the Rebirth app?
They had
it on iPhone and they took it away, but isn't it still on iPad?
I think it's still on iPad.
On iPad, I use it on my iPad quite a bit actually, like more than makes sense. That's one of my favorite little apps, just because it's like, it's not that it's overly deep or anything like that. It's just that I got 808, I got 303, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can just groove, and I don't have to guess. Like, I know what I'm working with. You know what I mean?
The essentials.
Does it control the desktop app?
That would be nice, but I don't think it does.
No.
But as far as like making presets, I think it's a little bit of a hassle. But you can get your presets from the iPad over to the Reason version. You just have to go through iTunes file sharing, if I'm not mistaken.
Very cool.
Yeah. So just connect to iTunes, drag and drop those presets over to your computer, and load them up in Reason.
Really? I didn't. Oh yeah. Hold on. Here's inbox. Let me see. No, I don't think that's possible. But maybe I just overlooking something here. There's an inbox in the. Let me see if I can share this again with you guys.
So essentially what you guys are interested in doing with that is just using it when you're away from home, designing on it, taking it, importing your presets, and then going to town on it from there.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But see, I'm finding myself with more iPad apps that I really like the idea of, and they're even decently executed, but I don't really use them as often as, like, I mean, I have, for instance, I love iSem. It's great. It's one of my favorite apps. However,
I just bought that, by the way.
However, I'm much more inclined, like, I don't make too much music with just my iPad. Like, I have a Retina MacBook Pro. If I want to make music on the road, I'll often just bring that. When I'm in the studio, though, I'm not really reaching for iSEM. I have actual analog hardware SEM modules, and I'm using that. So it's like, and even units that I don't have emulations of, like, for instance, my honest favorite app that I constantly keep going back to, synthesizer-wise, would be Nave from Waldorf. And I'm constantly finding new things that I can do with Nave. I think Nave sounds fantastic, and I love it.
Yes.
But I don't use my apps all that much. I still much prefer actual knobs to a touchscreen anything. And, like, yeah, you can map them, but at the same time, it's like, no, I just want to turn it on. I just want to touch knobs. I just want to, you know, and that sounds dirty, but I just want to, like, get a hold of my gear and go to town like that. Are you guys finding that you're picking up a lot of apps that, like, maybe you're buying more apps than you're actually using, or do you guys find yourself actually using them as much as you're buying?
Well, let me jump in real quick on that because I have a lot of iPad synths, and my purpose for buying them really is to use with Reason. Reason doesn't have VST support, so an app will cost me, you know, $10, $15 for a synth that sounds just as good as, you know, anything you can get in a VST. So what I do is use the apps with Reason, since Reason has MIDI out, and, you know, Reason has a lot of synths you can buy through the Rack Extension store, but at the same time, you know, to pay $15 for, you know, Thor, or, well, a better example, Nave, or, you know, iSIM, and then use that with Reason just makes more sense to me. So that's why I buy a lot of apps, and I do end up using them in my studio. So
now, when you use them with your iPad, are you just using the MIDI out device and then recording the audio from your iPad?
yeah, I have an Alesis I/O dock, so everything connects, and it functions just like a piece of hardware. I mean, it has, you know, I/O and everything, MIDI in and everything, so it's good to go. It functions just like a piece of hardware.
How much does that thing cost you? I might look into something like that.
I think it was at the time it was about 120.
Not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. So
Behringer brought, and even Focusrite. I think Focusrite brought out a new dock for the iPad from version 4 up to the iPad Air for the newer Lightning connection. And Behringer brought out a thing that's pretty similar to the Alesis dock. It's around $100 for the old wider iPad connection.
Yep.
I mean, for $100 you have totally studio integration. That's pretty good, and I'm thinking about getting one because my keyboard here is nice. It does pretty much the same. The only thing is I can't get MIDI clock from my computer into the iPad. That's a little annoying, but on the other hand, it's not that terrible, you know, because I just played like a analog synth anyway, so.
Yeah, I find myself, like, I just enjoy, a lot of them sound really fantastic, but I'm just finding myself, I think, being more enthralled with the thought of having all these, you know, what would be VSTs, like, right in my hand on my iPad that I can always take with me, than I actually use. It's odd, though. But, like, Nave is kind of an exception. Nave I'll pull out pretty much at any point. So, like, there are exceptions to the rule. There are certain ones that are better. But I do find me using my iPad more for control things, like sequencers, like step sequencing and things like that. I tend to use it for more than just straight sound.
I have to say, I see those synth. I mean, I love Analog, I love Neve. These are great sounds, but I mostly take the iPad when I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, and you know, sometimes friends come over and watching a movie I'm not really interested in, so I pick up the iPad, pull on my headphones, and start creating sounds on the synth. It's like gaming, you know.
Yeah. Yep. I know exactly what you mean.
On the other side, if I have some like 3 or 4 sounds that I really like, I pull it over to the studio and I use it as a real instrument.
Right.
But it's not like I'm buying new apps only for the studio. It's really it's entertaining, you know. It's not like a real VST that I pay hundreds of bucks for and use it as a real tool. It's more the fun factor that matters to me.
Yeah.
So
I've never used iOS for my music. I've never actually used it with Machine or.
do you think that's because you're on an iPad 1, or do you think that that's something else?
I just think the most I ever use it for is if I'm sitting there and I'll load up iMachine and make a quick something if I'm waiting somewhere.
Mhm.
But I like to make music in the lab where I have everything all set up. Any sound I want, it's in the machine already in my browser, and I can just go and get it quick. I can't think of a sound that I couldn't just get right there. Why would I take the time to set up all the iOS stuff when it's already all set up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So just to roll that topic on, so there's been in the producers hangout, we've had a lot of discussion about analog versus digital, and a great example of this that kind of ties in with the iPad is in using the emulations of things like iSAM and the VCS3, the Minimoog, units like that. Are you guys? Well, first off, let me just break this down, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not pro or con analog or digital. I like both for totally different reasons from each other. But what's the consensus inside here? Richard, do you have any feelings as far as when you're using analog versus digital?
I like the sound of analog better. Yet, I mean, as Monarch, we'd consider Monarch digital, right?
Yes.
Yeah, digital
It
sound.
sounds so analog, it doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
When it comes to a synth, I tend to like the sound of analog synths. I like the sound of good old-fashioned subtractive analog synths. I don't like the sound of FM synthesis. I don't like the sound of the other ones. There's something about subtractive I really like. So that analog sound is kind of important to me. Yet, I will go to Monarch before I go to the actual Moog because it's just easier to use.
And see, that's interesting to me because I still find myself using the hardware synths more. Like, I don't find. There was a point where I felt that the VSTs were easier to use than the hardware. I don't really feel like that anymore because I find that I work faster and more efficiently when I print to audio. And if I were to do that with a VST, I would have to record it with a VST and then resample it, whereas oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just go live, and like my workflow is primarily with Machine. So what I'll do is I'll set up a group where the input is coming in from my analog gear. I will make a pattern. I'll just hit record, let it run, do my tweaks and have my fun with it, and then hit the next pattern and just keep going. And I'll fill up like 16 patterns. It's all printed to audio already, and I feel like it's actually quicker for me than the VSTs are. So for me, that kind of doesn't really hold true anymore, which is odd because that was my main reason for using VSTs before. What about you, Bryce?
I like analog. I like the way analog sounds. To me, I don't know. I want to try to put it into words like warmth or like these little subtle
Nuances?
nuances that digital doesn't really give you, and they try to mimic it, but digital comes off really clean and pristine, whereas analog, I think our ears still pick up on those little, like Kev said, nuances, and that's not only that, but the tactile, hands-on experience that you get when you're at a piece of hardware. Just the workflow. You turn a knob here, you turn a knob there, and all of a sudden you're getting these results in real time that you wouldn't necessarily get with a mouse and clicking and dragging. So that, to me, is the appeal of analog over digital. But I mean, I like both.
Compare that also to, I mean, even in well set up controllers that are not I'm not going to say a dedicated controller. Like, I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with Custom Synth has done like controllers for Diva.
Right.
And different synths. So that is what I would call the pinnacle of a dedicated controller. Okay? Aside from that, let's say something like Machine that automats really well. Okay. Even with that, I still don't get 100% of the same kind of immediacy that I get from the actual hardware. When I'm working with actual hardware, and this is not just a analog thing. I mean, this holds true for even if I'm using something like a Virus or the Alesis Ion or other digital synths. But hardware in general, when you have that immediacy of knob per function, I find it much more enjoyable, and I can get exactly what I want far faster. But I did that test where I showed I did a pared down patch of the Sub Fatty and a pared down patch that was matched volume and everything to Monarch, and a lot of the times the parts of analog filters that are extremely difficult to mimic are the growling features, the parts of the filter where it starts to break up and it starts to go a little bit crazy, have a little bit of happy accidents, that kind of thing. That's usually where a digital synth tends to kind of fall down. But when I was working with Monarch, I was able to actually get those same kinds of happy accidents. Monarch's the only one that I've really found that gets that close. I mean, Diva gets pretty good, but still doesn't quite do that. But that is pretty remarkable. Now, that is the exception to the rule, in my opinion, because when I'm using something like Massive or, which sounds fantastic. I love Massive for how it sounds. But when I want, like I was doing a track recently where I was using like this growling synth sound and noise mixed in with it, analog noise mixed in with the growling synth sound, and then, having it wave through the track as I was playing the filter, and musically playing the filter like it's an actual instrument. I don't feel like I could have achieved the same kind of track using just digital, VSTs or something. It just wouldn't have worked for me.
Right.
That kind of touches back on, and we were talking about this in the pre-show, when you were saying why am I like that with, or why am I not, overly concerned with audio, and that's actually or audio quality. And when we talk about analog versus digital, it's those imperfections that I think our ear really likes. I kind of, like everybody else said, I prefer the sound of analog. I use mostly in the box stuff because I prefer to work in the box. That's just kind of my preference. I am thinking about getting maybe like a mini brute this year, though. Just something small just to add that little bit of flavor.
Yep.
I know me, I don't like tracking hardware. Not just something I don't like to do. To me, it takes too long to get to where I want to do it, and I want to get the audio in like as soon as I play it, maybe even play it live. So for me, sometimes it's easier to just use a soft synth to get that sound.
I think a lot of that comes down to
laziness.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to not so much laziness, but being happy with your workflow in general. Because if you're not happy with your workflow, you're not going to make as much music. You're not going to be as creative. And when I say not going to be as creative, a lot of people will say, oh, well, a piece of gear isn't what makes you creative. No, but it can inspire creativity.
Right.
Right. And sometimes gear can be a distraction.
Exactly.
With creativity.
Exactly. And if you have like me and Bryce, we have these modular setups in our studio where, as a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's just a distraction, and you're just going to sit there plugging all day and not making anything. And that's true. I can sit there and plug all day long and just be happy, not making a single thing. But when I want to get down and make music, I know it so well from playing with it like that I can instantly sculpt exactly what I want right then, and I can get it into Machine right then because I've found the workflow that works for me. And what works for me might not be what works for somebody who's like an FL Studio user or somebody who's just a standalone MPC and vinyl guy, or there's lots of different workflows that work for that specific individual. There's reasons why some people love Reason, some people love Ableton Live, some people love Machine. And it's not necessarily because one is better than the other. It could just be simply because one works for that person's workflow better. Same with PC and Mac,
Yeah.
Exactly.
For me, the hands-on aspect is actually the most important thing. As you said, when you compare the analog synths version, the emulation on the computer, it's just nuances in the sound. But what I think is when you, and I'm not talking about loading some presets or stuff. I mean, when you really want to sculpture a sound with a real controller with dedicated buttons, you never sit on the computer and you don't have like two mouse cursors where you can pull two knobs at the same time. And that's, for me, that's what makes a huge difference, because when I sit here on my controller and I can actually turn 2 or 3 knobs at the same time, maybe something totally unexpected will happen. And that's the sound for me, you know. When I sit and, I mean, I have Massive and I have mapped some controls here to my keyboard, but still there's so many functions in Massive or FM8 or Absinthe. Absinthe is so bad when it comes to MIDI mapping, you know. There are so many functions you just can't reach from controller. You have to click with the mouse, and you have to do it one after another.
Right.
And that's what really, that's what's really distracting my workflow.
Yeah. And when you're in a soft synth, well, when you're at a piece of hardware, you can say, you know, you're saying to yourself, okay, let me tweak this filter. Okay, now let me move the resonance knob, or let me adjust the envelope, you know. And when you're in a soft synth, you can't necessarily think like that. I mean, you can, but to do it with a hands-on approach, you can't do that. So and if you want to map it, you have to take that time. Okay, let me map it, map this, and map this, and then by that time, you know, what did you even want to do? You know, where are you at creatively? So it breaks up that creative flow. Whereas when you're on hardware, you're just moving from knob to knob, you know. So
exactly, that's the thing. The flow, you know, that's what I like about Machine. You know, you can get into the flow, like with an MPC or with an external analog synth. But when I have like Massive, and I mapped out some functions, and I start getting into the flow, and then I know, oh, now there's a function, and I need to go back to my mouse, and it totally distracts me from creating that sound, just from the technical side. And that's where dedicated controllers, I mean, I'm not talking hardware in general. When I think of a Pulse 2, you have the same submenu stuff going on, and that's probably that would distract me the same way like a VST plugin would distract me. But I'm talking from a dedicated controller. That's what I'm aiming for. That's exactly how I get into the flow and get the best sound out of it.
So let me ask you guys a question. Let's say you had an opportunity to buy, let's say, something like a Nord Electro or something to that effect, or buy a dedicated hardware controller for Diva, right? Like Custom Synth makes, right? Which would you prefer to go for? Would you prefer to go for the hardware unit of something like a standalone synth like that, or something that gave you 100% knob per function, but it was still a VST?
I bought the controller.
I bought both. I would.
Oh yeah, we got both.
I think you really can't compare it because it's totally different. Like Nord League, first of all, the price difference would be huge.
Well, no. I'm trying to say more towards the line of, okay, let's say you were going to spend $1,000 on a piece of hardware synth, right? And one of them is a hybrid controller where it's actually using a VST, but it's controlling it knob per function, versus an actual standalone synth, but it's not a VST inside of your computer. Which would you prefer? And yeah, and Rich is bringing up a great point, bringing up the sub fat.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Both. I mean, having a dedicated controller, I mean, this is no matter what synth I'm using, my ADSRs are always right here. My filter's always right here, my resonance is always right here, my LFO speed is always right here. And whatever soft synth I load up, I quickly map it, I MIDI CC it, boom, it's right there. You know? My ADSR envelope is never far away. It's right where I need it.
But let me say, when you use Massive, okay, and you map those functions, but you still need to use the mouse to route the LFO to your cutoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the point where it starts distracting me, and the flow is gone.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying, like, a controller that's made like, imagine if you had a massive controller that had all of its functions already done. Like, there is no mapping. There's no mapping. It's done.
I would
buy that, or would you rather buy something that did not have the computer integration but was a standalone synth? Would it matter to you that it was a VST?
No. If it sounds
I agree.
good.
I would love to have that. Like, if I had that Diva controller that was made by Custom Synth, give me that.
So I don't know if your Moog your sub
The Moog Sub Fatty.
The Sub Fatty, there we go. Does it have VST integration? Because I know the Moog Sub 37 is going to have VST integration.
They both do.
I never used it.
So there you go. In a sense, that's like the best of both worlds right there.
Yeah.
And then the Analog 4 also, that's coming for the Analog 4. So really, like, that would be the best solution in my opinion.
The problem with the Analog 4, and you can speak to this more as, you know, being an owner of the Analog 4, is that there's still a bit of menu diving, right?
There's not a lot of menu diving, honestly. There's you have a filter knob, and then you have a second filter. So to get to that second filter, you have to press a button.
Yeah, see, I am the kind of guy, and again, this gets back to workflow, whereas like somebody like Kev or somebody is going to prefer to just get to the sounds and play the sounds, whereas somebody like me, who's a sound designer, is going to, like, I want to get to that third looping LFO, you know what I mean, or third looping ESR, you know, things like that. Like, I want to get to these really deep, more often hidden features. Like for instance, I had the Sub Fatty, and I keep the iPad connected to it, and I have an app running that gives me all the hidden features of Sub Fatty right there at my fingertips, because I want that deepness right at my fingertips at all times.
Right. The Analog 4 really doesn't have a lot of menu diving. I mean, it's like it has envelope 1 and envelope 2. So to get to envelope 2, you just have to press a button, and you're on the envelope 2 page. And all the buttons, all the knobs correspond to all the parameters on the second page. You want to get to the first envelope, you press the button, all the knobs correspond to all the parameters on the first page. So at most, you just have to press one button to get to a secondary function.
Yeah.
Like a shift button.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not at all bad.
Yeah. I don't want to belittle the Analog 4. I didn't mean so much as that, but I do. I just think that there's a really large market for more hybrid units coming out, similar to Machine, where it's a controller, but it's dedicated to this one piece of software. And sure, that software houses more things, but and I guess Arturia has also done that with the Spark, and they've also done it with, to an extent, they've done it to Analog Factory. But I would love it if, like, more of these synth manufacturers came out with them. Now, granted, a lot of people aren't going to want them cluttering up studios, but at the same time, maybe, like, if the manufacturer has a dedicated controller for a line of synths, you know what I mean? Like, that would be great,
Take Reactor.
Instruments would kill it with something like that.
If Reactor gave us a controller. Oh.
I didn't catch what you say, Rich. I didn't catch that.
Like, if we had a Reactor controller, it would probably be very similar to the Sub Fatty controller. And I have a feeling NI is going to do it. They're going to give us a massive controller. They're going to give us an absinthe. They're going to give us a Reactor. I think it's going to happen.
I think they'll give us
Reactor would be. Reactor is such a broad term. Like, Reactor is an environment. So to say a Reactor controller, I mean, like, what is a Reactor controller when at one point I'm using Reactor to be a preamp, and the next point I'm using it to be a sequencer, and the next point I'm using it to play a game of alien chess. So, which is a really cool ensemble. I highly recommend.
Alien chess, does it make noise?
It does, and it's very weird. I'll send you the ensemble. I'm actually working on an article now of my 100 favorite user library selections.
Nice, nice.
Favorites.
And yes, I'm doing 100 because no, I could not narrow it down.
There's what 10,000 in the user.
Yeah, I mean just my own personal selection is it's ginormous.
Yeah.
Ginormous. So
Mine is only at like 5. I don't. I use a few reactor ensembles a lot, and the others I'll just use if I want something new. I go load something up, and there's something cool in Reactor, but I tend to go to a few specific ensembles a lot, and that's it.
I use it just like I use record digging. Like when I go record digging, I go deep. So I'm out for the day, and I'm digging through the records, and I come home with large stacks of records. I rarely will buy 1 or 2 records at a time, and I do the same thing with Reactor, and I dig the same way too. I look at who built the ensemble, who collaborated on the ensemble, who did the snaps, the Reactor presets for the ensemble, who did the GUI design for it, and then I dig through and I find, oh, well, this guy worked on this one, and this guy worked on that one, and I liked this one for this reason, so maybe he did something similar. And I start digging like that.
Nice.
Now I have a huge collection of these things because Reactor's been around for so long, and there's some brilliant builders out there. So I've amassed a collection of some really great ensembles, and it's all just like record digging,
I'd love a plugin for Contact. I mean, a controller for Contact that had controls that were for building, so that when you're under the hood, those are the things that map to the controller.
Yeah, but that's stuff for guys that are sound designers, and
I don't think that one's going to come, but I would love that.
Small niche.
I'd love to see it anyway, because I don't know. I found Contact to be even like just is using it just for like as a preset box. Like I use it as a workstation. I don't make any sounds with it, but I find it to be a bit tedious. Like especially compared to other workstations. Like I always talk about how much I love Sample Tank. The thing I love about Sample Tank is simplicity. I love how simple it is. I sound. Yeah, really well, you can do with Contact, but it's a lot more complex than it has to be.
I agree. I have Contact, and I very rarely go like behind whatever the back part of it, if you will, because it's so complicated. Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, even just loading presets makes it more complicated than it has to be, because you have to go through all the different libraries and everything, and just the way it's situated. Like I wish they would have. Wish they would change the GUI to make it a lot more simplistic. Like, say, like Contact, I think it was version 3 or 4, where you didn't have the big pictures of the libraries. You literally just had a list of sounds.
You can still access that.
Can you? I've been with the default way of doing things, so I haven't looked into it. I'll look into it.
Yeah, let me just, I just need to say this now because I would feel completely wrong if I didn't. And I just wanted to say condolences and a ton of respect to Stephen Howell, who passed away just the other day. Stephen Howell is the creator of Hollow Sun. So if you use Hollow Sun products and you're familiar with him, you know what a massive loss it is to the sound design community, music making community as a whole. So I really just wanted to, rest in peace, because that guy was amazing, huge inspiration. So
great stuff. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Hollow Sun. It's really sad. Yesterday I was really sad about it.
When did he pass? This is the first time I've heard about it.
He passed, 2 days ago or 3 days ago?
Yeah, I've been so busy. Like, you guys know I'm going back to school and I was doing this paper. I've been so busy with papers, and I have finals in 2 weeks that I haven't been paying much attention to anything.
And let me just recommend also, I highly, if people haven't gone to Hollow Sun, check out Hollow Sun, because they have amazing free packs and they have amazing for sale packs. But they also have an instrument called the Shell, which deals with a lot of what we're talking about, which is it's just a shell that has access to all these parameters that you can get to that would normally be under the hood, but they're already put there for you. And then if you want to put your own sounds into it, you put your own sounds into it, and it's all right there, easily mapped out for you. So
it's the perfect interface too. I mean,
it really is.
All sound stuff. I mean, every one of those interfaces are amazing.
Bring the crowd. Yep.
That guy Mario, Evil Dragon. Mario.
Yep.
He does such a good job, and they're just really, really well done.
And the fact that Seriously, none of their instruments could, by any stretch of the imagination, be considered overpriced. Like the prices and the instruments that he brought forth to the public also was just insane. I mean, the Nova chord that he did was fantastic. I mean, just a ton of awesome instruments, and like I said, just a huge inspiration. So, you know, he'll be sorely missed.
Wow.
I have a question for you guys now. Let's move on to a happier subject.
Yeah.
We were talking about the analog versus digital, and so what do you guys think about emulations versus the actual real hardware? Like, is there really, like, to me sometimes I think what's the point if it's not going to completely capture the analog sound? Why continue to try to remake these?
That's a good thought, and I think about that a lot. And there are people that are getting closer, like Monarch is extremely close to what a real Moog actually sounds like. And I think that there's a lot of use cases for that. I personally, ease of use-wise, there is certain things that I do really like about emulations. Like when I'm using, I love using Supercharger GT just to get an analog type of clipping. Like the way that you can overdrive that plugin sounds very similar to the way you can actually overdrive an analog circuit. Like the way that the waveforms clip is very similar. Mm-hmm. So I'll use that a lot, and I would prefer that they continue doing that. I wouldn't want them to stop making emulations for that reason, you know?
Right.
I was thinking more along the lines of synthesizers, and instead of recreating a synthesizer, like with effects, it makes sense. With the synthesizer, there's so many new things we could do.
I agree.
Why not try to reinvent the wheel a little bit? Try something new rather than keep putting out emulation after emulation. With effects, I think it makes sense.
Well,
with synths, not so much.
With a sample-based one, you get other things. You get the sound of the preamp. If they sampled the tape like Tronsonic, you get those special characteristics that are on his original samples. So say I want the sound of an old analog synth, and I pick a Tronsonic one, it's going to have all this character that came in through those awesome preamps that he used, through the tape that he ran it through. It was all worn sounding. So you can get kind of more character in your sounds depending on how it was sampled. Mm-hmm. If you sample a Moog synth through a Neve preamp, you're going to get a very different sound than if you sample it through an API. You're going to get a different sound than if you sample it through a simple KA6. So all those things really do make a difference, and that's why with Contact and the third-party contacts, you can get so many different sounds
because the way they record it.
Yeah, you can get the same sound but with a different character.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but also with what Kev is saying, I mean, there are still a lot of really interesting new things that are being done, and so there's a lot of people focusing on emulation, and I think there's reasons for that. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of other things going on, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. That's why, I like Reactor so much, because you have all these kind of maybe people that are creatively inspired to make something happen, but aren't, day job developers at a major company that is going to squash an idea, So you get things like these modal bank synthesizers and odd, modeling-based synths and effects, and so there's like the grain synthesis got really big for a while. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Like somebody like Rich, he's said a million times in private conversations, and he just said on the show, he's not a fan of FM-based synthesis. But there may come a new version of FM synthesis that he enjoys, and people are constantly pushing those boundaries. So I don't think it's so much just people focusing on emulations. I think there's still a lot of people trying to push those boundaries. But you're finding them a lot more in things like Max MSP and Reactor and these building environments that are kind of like letting people kind of dive in,
Right. I want to see more people reinvent the wheel and even standalone traditional synthesizers, as opposed to, you see the people who are pushing the boundaries and they're doing it, like you said, in Max for Live and even with Reason rack extensions, there are some people trying to push the boundaries. I see it there too. I see it in Reactor. I'm waiting to see till somebody, you get like a big company besides Native Instruments, they push the boundaries every so often. I want to see Yuhi do something just crazy. He has a lot of great ideas. All their synths are fantastic. I want to see them make a synthesizer that's just completely left field.
What do you think about the? Can you hear me? What do you guys think about the new concept Roland has? Because I just ordered a Era System 1, or I pre-ordered it. It's not available in Germany at the moment, and I mean, it's virtual analog, so it's kind of an emulation. But I like the idea they go with these plug-out. They call it a plug-out synthesizer, so you can later on they will release new.
You can essentially load up newer VST models and whatnot into newer, not VST, but newer models into it. But I would also say, I would argue quickly, not a new idea. This is something that's been around for a while. They are kind of using their marketing scheme to act like this is completely new. It's really not completely new. What was it called? Oh damn.
I know what you're talking about.
The Pluggiator. Pluggiator was one of them. And
didn't they have a rack like 10 years ago where you could like?
No, I'm not going down that road. Hold on, slow down. I want to go to exactly what the Roland one is doing. So there was Pluggiator. There was also Creamware. Creamware did one as well, and the Creamware I believe also worked with Pluggiator. But so you're talking about Receptor, but Receptor was actually using the VSTs. Creamware was they did a Prophet 5, and it was a box that had all the knobs of the Prophet 5, but it was an emulation of the Prophet 5. They also did mini mode, and then later on they released that for another box that had just like a row of knobs, and you could get the Prophet 5 in it, you could get the mini mode in it, and then they started releasing a few updates. I think the company's gone under now, but this is not like a new concept. Like this is something that people have been working on, doing these. Basically, they're compact computers that can run the software, and and dedicated hardware to go along with it. I really like the idea that Roland's doing it. I hope that they come out with a whole bunch of different models for it. I really do, and I believe they're going to be doing it for the TR8 as well, and possibly the TV3 as well. So the drum machines are going to have more and more models to them, and I think that's great because I just love the hands-on control.
No, what I actually wanted to ask is, what do you think about virtual analog synthesizers versus software emulations plus a controller?
As long as the controller is mapped really well, to me it's kind of a non-issue. But it depends on how well it's mapped, really, because and how well that standalone hardware is mapped. Like you could let's say for instance they did the TR8 and they did a drum machine and the layout just sucked. Like it just didn't work for that particular emulation. Same with System 1. Like I know they have the light up knob, which I think is a great idea. But let's say if that just didn't work, like it didn't. For whatever specific emulation, it just didn't feel good, well then I'd rather have the controller. Whichever feels best is the one that I'm going to pick. My only downside about that System 1 is the controller keyboard itself seems to be pretty low quality. It's very shallow keys and doesn't have aftertouch, things like that. I'm like, if you're gonna put these things into a box, put it into a fully featured box that I can use as my master controller. You know what I mean? Like I would prefer that to be. I'd prefer to pay a little bit more and have it be very high quality and give me all the features that I'm going to need, as opposed to skimping in a few areas. Even though you could argue that it's for portability or whatever, but if you're going to be giving me all these different synths, like just give it to me.
I'm kind of disappointed with the Era series. I think I touched on this before anyway. I'm ready for Roland to try something new. Like they've been rehashing the same things over and over again. I think like part of what made the MV8000 even like just pushing on that, and even that they kind of rehashed the MPC in a way, but they made it unique and they added something new to the table. But since then, I haven't seen much innovation or even attempts at innovation from Roland.
Yeah.
The last really inspiring thing that I remember them doing was probably the V-Synth.
Yes, the V-Synth. Yeah, that was a good. And didn't that come out after the MV or before?
I don't recall the exact timeline, but I mean, to me, they're two very different products. Like the MV was great as well. It was a little bit, it had its faults, but I would love to see them continue the MV line. Like I would love to see a newer MV series.
You can make like an MV that's like similar to say like a Machine or an MPC Renaissance. I think it would actually do really well.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of directions they could go with that. But Roland, it's interesting because we see companies like Korg who are really excelling with certain products, like they're doing like all these smaller analog products, and now they've taken the Triton and turned it into a keyboard controller with the Triton Tactile. So like you see, Korg is like kind of like moving around in the industry and doing these different maneuvers. I don't really see the same from Roland. Like every year I go to NAMM, I run to the Roland booth expecting to see something cool, and every year I'm disappointed with it.
Yamaha is doing that too. Like they've hugged onto the motif line for so long.
Yeah, that's true. Like I would really
Yamaha and Roland have a different audience than Yamaha and Roland's primary customer is the live keyboard player who plays in a band. And it's different than the software-based companies. I wish they would embrace the software as well. I wish that they would embrace a ton of stuff, but I don't think they're going to. It's cool that Korg is doing it, though. Korg is shaking things up. I never liked Korg until recently.
Yeah, I kind of would agree with that because I had Tritons and I couldn't stand them. But, yeah, like I love all the little analog boxes that they're doing. I mean, yes, I'm a synth nerd, but I love that. I love the fact that, a few years ago, they were the first people to come out with those, the Korg Nano Pad and Nano Key, and then everybody started coming out with those after them. They started following suit. Akai came out with them, and, you started seeing more of these little tiny controllers. It seems to me like they've been very well known for doing similar products to Roland and Yamaha as well.
They were number 3.
But it just really seems to me like these other companies are kind of staying stagnant. And Roland has some really interesting background, with the RC loop pedals and the SP series of performance samplers. And they've got great effects boxes that they could, draw from and expand on their customer base. But I just don't see them inspiring me at all. It's a shame.
I think what Korg is doing is awesome.
Yep.
I think even with Roland and Yamaha, like you mentioned that their main audience is the the keyboard guys. That's not even so much my problem, like the bands and everything. My problem is that they're not trying to do anything new. It's not even so much with software. If you're going to do something with hardware, do something new with the hardware. Do something new and interesting. And I feel like they're just kind of rehashing the same old things.
Well, Roland gave us the D-beam.
Oh, God. On that note, I say we wrap the show up.
Yeah. We'll go on for that about another 45 minutes.
So anyway, I'm gonna close out. I'm here at Creative Live in Seattle. It was a 6-hour flight with some old ladies next to me. But what is it? Tomorrow and the next day, we will be live streaming from Creative Live Studios. Myself, J.K. Swoops of SoundsandGear.com, and Knox Squared of Machine Tutorials. We will be performing a Mastering Machine course. So I highly recommend you check out CreativeLive.com and FluxWithIt.com. And I'll pass it off to you guys and say goodbye. I'm going to run out of here because I got to get in the studio.
Later, Ken.
Go for it, Flux. Good luck tomorrow,
guys.
Later, Ken.
Peace.
Bye.
All right, well, I'm going to get ready to wrap this up, too, because I got to go get my kids from my mother's house and got to finish up this paper because, as I said before, I'm in finals week, so I got to get all this classwork done. And I'm just glad I got my mojo back because I've been unable to make music for like the last month. My brain just hasn't wanted to, and I've just been gaming, trying to wait for it to come back.
Yep, I know how that is.
So I'm going to try to make some music today if I get
Nice.
it.
Guys, thanks for having me here. Very cool.
Well, thanks for coming through, Rich.
Yeah, take care, guys. See you guys in 2 weeks.
It's,
From the
June
Producers
15th.
Hangout.
Mike, you want to say anything before we go?
Yeah, I want to say bye from the future because it's already 11 p.m. here.
I'm wearing my time traveling shirt today. My wild stuff.
Also, for all the people who keep asking for a workflow video with Machine 2.1 in Studio One, I got you guys covered. I will upload a video tonight. And I also have a template for you guys because I have a huge amount of emails and messages on Facebook asking for that topic. And I struggled a few days until I really find a working workflow for me. If Native Instrument is watching this, please improve MIDI batch setup even more than now because it still sucks.
Hey, it's better than it was.
Bye, guys.
Later.
Thank you.